This is a Compaq Deskpro 425IS, which is a computer that has a fun switch on the front. It also has an ugly CD drive on the front, but whatever. It's an OEM machine that has most of its hardware integrated onto the motherboard, and for that reason I like it and dislike it both at the same time. For this reason you'll have to deal with some hardware issues, either that or suffer duplicates of the same hardware, but I'll get into that later. First I guess we'll look in the back. This thing is really heavy. As you can see in the back, it's all pretty normal, except that parallel port for some reason has a metal bar in between the two rows of pins. It also has a small expansion port there, supposedly for a modem. And on the left, of course, you have your generic power supply. Also right here, you can also see that it has built-in audio, which I decided to not use. The first thing I find annoying about this machine is that its VGA plug uses the older style, which is missing a pin, which I'm guessing is used for identifying monitors and plug-and-play systems in the future. So the only way you're going to be using this computer is if you use an old pile of crap monitor like this one, or you modify a plug to use with later monitors, as I have. It's not the prettiest thing in the world, but it works. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the heavy steel case that Compaq put on top of this thing. They have patrician taste in bolts, so they are Torx. They're nice until you lose them. Like many other cases of this form factor, the top slides off the front, sort of like a midget AT in a way. And underneath is the metal beast that weighs way too much for its size. So the first thing I notice when I open up the computer is this big black blank here. I'm not sure what goes there. I wonder if it's supposed to be some sort of coast module, or if it's supposed to be for VLB extensions or something like that, but it's just kind of there. So besides that, you have your typical smaller form factor PC of the time with its riser card there with the 3 ISO slots that it provides. And if you look a little bit closer, you can see there's a blank spot for a 386 and a 387 coprocessor, so maybe this motherboard design was used for both 486 and 386 machines. However, the CPU that's in the machine right now is a 486 DX2 66 MHz. I also installed the typical Sound Blaster 16 Vibra because I don't like the onboard sound chip. It just makes things a little bit easier to deal with. Below the expansion cards is the video adapter that's built into the motherboard, which has, I think, 1 MB of video RAM. It also has what appears to be pins for an expansion on the video RAM if you so desire. Of course, if you do desire, then good luck finding one. In order to access the memory, you have to remove the hard drive, which is kind of interesting. Mainly because I guess it's what you would call a full-height 3.5-inch drive. It's rather large for a drive you'd see in a computer like this. As you can see, it's on a metal frame, which actually has rubber mounts on it for shock absorption. I guess this could have been used in an industrial application where vibrations were a thing. I guess it could protect the hard drive. So underneath this bar, I think, is the connector for the proprietary modem, and also under that is the analog devices chip that controls the sound output for the computer if you want to use that, which I don't. There's a jumper on the motherboard that actually disables it if you want. One interesting thing about this chip, I guess more like how this chip is used, is this plastic caddy that holds both the power switch and the speaker, because actually the sound chip's sound can actually be played through the speaker. Also, this setup is kind of nice because it provides a strain relief for your switch if for whatever reason it becomes dislodged from the plastic shroud itself. I guess if you really want to do that. So I guess I'm going to turn this thing on and see what it does. Actually, I know what it does, but I'm going to show you what it does so you know what it does. One of the big annoying things about this machine is its BIOS settings, or its CMOS settings menu. The reason I was mashing on the keyboard is because I can't remember what key it is to get into the menu, and the best way to get in there is just to give it a keyboard error by mashing all the keys. So the big thing about this BIOS setup is not really that it's bad in itself, it's just that for some reason it's not kept on the BIOS itself. I had to get some help from the VCF forums finding a file in a big ol' FTP site from Compaq containing the files to run the BIOS, and I guess for whatever reason after you run it from a disk, it saves itself to the hard drive. If for whatever reason your hard disk fails, you'll have to find a disk to put those files on and boot it from there, otherwise you will not be able to gain access to the BIOS. Another issue I have with this computer is that it doesn't like any other hard drive but the hard drive that's in there already. If I try any other hard drive, it will fail to detect the drive, and of course it won't work. I'm not sure why it does this. So besides all that other hoopla, it's basically just another regular 486 machine minus the ability to run games that require VISA video. I'm not sure if there are any drivers that make this computer support VISA video modes, or if this is even a super VGA card or display adapter inside the machine, or if it's just regular VGA, but for whatever reason games like SimCity 2000 and I'm pretty sure Duke Nukem 3D will not work on this computer. When you try running the game, it will fail to detect a VISA driver, so it will suggest that you use its built-in VISA driver instead. But if you try doing that, it will give you a corrupted screen, which is probably a warning telling you that you can't run the game anyway. So if you were to run any other video game, it would act like any other DX2 without a VLB card, which is slower than it could have been. But considering that this is a business machine and it's probably a little bit older than VLB is, what more can you expect? What kind of surprised me is that Tyrion ran rather slow even on the lowest settings, but I'm not really used to running this game on a machine that's this slow, so I guess that's pretty normal. One game that kind of surprised me was Doom. Even though this computer doesn't have a VLB card, it ran pretty well, but with the window a little bit smaller than the full screen. Also, if you can bear running Doom in low detail mode, it actually runs very well. Of course, being a Wolfenstein 3D engine game, Rise of the Triad runs pretty well on a non-VLB 486. So this is a weird little computer that I just kind of like for its compact size and its just general heft. It makes it feel like a quality product or a quality computer in a way. However, due to its little weird issues, I guess I couldn't recommend it as a first old computer for anybody. Most other old computers with their generic hardware would not require you to go to the internet and search through FTP files to find BIOS programs, so it's a little bit easier to deal with more generic hardware than this, but if you're willing to go through that length, I guess it's pretty nice to have such a small machine.